About the other assertions about the worthfulness of activities and the level ground for political parties, I think I had earlier on hinted on it in as far as how we as a party think that things should be run. And I tried as much as possible to differentiate between activities of pure state agents. It is true we are the ruling party, we formed the government and we organize the government. So the activities of government agents like intelligence and police vis-a-vis the party, we definitely want a level ground. Partly why we want level ground is because we are confident of ourselves in as far as our manifesto is concerned and our support is concerned. By the way, Judith, a research has been done now that in support, even if you commission it tomorrow, maybe things would have changed. But the research in Uganda is that NRM still leads in majority support. That's the public opinion. And this report has been done, is it by Afrometer or something like that several times? It is still comes. So, and we don't do this by grace of God. We don't achieve this by grace of God. We earn it by the simple, impactful interventions that we do. Because we know people's needs are the materiality. Somebody should be housed, accommodated, that is feeding and health and all that. And we do it through many interventions. Therefore, a level ground is a must. If my friend is calling for a level ground, I join him in calling for a level ground. I join him. And we equally call for a proper implementation of the law. But what I had said earlier, that I call upon my friends to do things that does not attract the state operators to intervene in the activities. In other words, for a long time, by the way, we have been having on a room inside the consultations. We have not been having rallies. Mm-hmm. We have gone to Lira. We have gone to this district of former Diego. We have had many rallies, including the Ibukedi. All our meetings have been indoors. We have never had a rally, not at all. Save for the presidential consultation, which he does as a head of state, not as a party chairman. And of course, you can't discount a head of state and a party chairman. Therefore, on the issue of a level ground, I join my colleague in calling for a level ground. And that is what we want because we are confident of ourselves. Now, about electoral reform, some of us, thought that it was good enough. There was some time when there was an amendment, and I'm told my colleagues were crying that the only amendment that was introduced is the word independent. That there was amendment in Parliament and it only introduced the word Independent Election Commission. But we take this as a party from a point of view that laws are not hard and frozen. Any law can be amended. So if colleagues feel that election reform need to be introduced, it's up to them. But for us, we waited to see tangible election commission a reform. Never, nothing. Including Mao, who had been crying for it. He was made a minister and he has not. Therefore, we know, for example, there could be cries like manners of appointment of commissioners. Kenya, they do it the other way around. Either there's a public vetting or otherwise. For us now, we have a vetting for Parliament. And we all know that our vetting in Parliament is a very thorough job. Mm-hmm. Because ministers have been rejected. In fact, it's even tighter at a cabinet level. The vetting is tighter because somebody was making a joke out of it, is that the members of the appointment committees themselves are candidates to the appointment. Now, for you to pass through them, they would be saying, why you, not me? So they'll be thorough and they end up doing a good job. But equally for other commissions, we have had people being rejected by the appointment. So it is not a rubber stamp. But anyhow, if anybody still feels that even from the appointment commissioners, we wait to see and it will be debated. So, we believe that the law is not hard and frozen. But some of us think that as it is, is still working and it's okay for us. But whoever has it can bring an amendment. So, you also mentioned something about 100 million, whether or not it has crosses paths with our roadmap. We don't think so, but I think we shall discuss money in its on
its, yeah, sure.
Let me stay it here.
Okay. Thank you. George, I'm still curious to know what your plans as a party internally look like. I know despite all the hurdles or blockages you're facing with state agencies, especially the police, what is the plan in terms of nomination? I mean, let's just have a rough idea, because there are people listening who probably would be interested in knowing. Maybe someone wants to pick to stand on the NUP ticket, but what exactly do the timelines look like? Even if it's just still a sketch, or if you're still having a conversation internally as a party, we'd also like to know.
No, I mentioned that actually we are having mobilization meetings which are meant to re-energize the grassroots structure for purposes of preparing for leading up the delegates conference, which was slated initially towards the end of June. And of course, in the delegates conference, that's where we shall have the nomination of different office bearers. People are supposed to, for those who want to different positions or different elective positions, that it will be released by the election management committee. It's yet to be released now. Okay. Those timelines will be released. What was happening now was also preparing for the youth elections, which are the most forthcoming, and not very far from now. And those are that has been sent out to all our different structures across the board, and which we're preparing for. And the reason why my colleague took issue with my answer, the reason I could as well have come here and start reading documents, that I was driving the debate to the bigger point, and that's the reason why you invite different people here, and maybe that's why I'm not in NRM, because I don't work in a box. The bigger debate is that a roadmap is contextualized. A roadmap is part of the bigger political discussion, that you cannot be preparing roadmaps. Roadmaps are just, I can as well draw a timetable and say we'll do this in May and June and July. That is something is smaller. The bigger issue is what is the context in which you're doing that roadmap. And it's not for us, it's our bigger concern. He's saying that, for us, we hold in indoors. I don't know that he has ever heard of a lady called Hajat Namyalo, who happens to be an NRM person holding some bit of an office called National something, who is holding rallies, holding convoys in the road, and even having artists on roads. So the question of as we prepare for elections, because yes, this thing called the elections, which are supposed to take place sometime in January next year, and all different parties are supposed to organize for them, all lawful registered parties. But how are they doing that, and in which environment? Because it's one thing to say that yes, we are supposed to be registering, we're supposed to be doing this and this in this month, but how do you even come up with a roadmap when you can't be allowed to meet these people, and you're saying, police says, no, we've stopped you because of this and this. Okay, well, if there's an offense, the duty of police is to prevent crime, is to arrest offenders and possibly arraign them in court. If you say that I've stopped you from holding rallies because of what has happened, was there a crime committed? Have you prosecuted anyone? The essence of public order management is to police regulate that if you find a person blocking the road, you remove them or you prosecute them if you think there's an offense. So Judith, whereas there are some activities which are planned, some of which cannot even take place now because of and they can only take place virtually. You realize that sometimes when we have meetings at our headquarters, it's because we can't be allowed to reach out to other places. There's a meeting which was supposed to take place in the next 6 days, but because of this blockage, it has now been called to headquarters. You can't reach out to the different people because of some of those constant blockages. So for me, party activities are one thing which can be slated or which have been organized and which have been affected, but what happens, in which environment are you doing that? And for me, it's the bigger point of debate.
Okay. Thank you. So it's about time for us to take a break. But before we do that, Stephen, let me just read this letter from the Electoral Commission dated 14th April, which the subject is adjustment of the period for the display of the National Voters Register and registers for special interest groups. And it says the Electoral Commission is mandated under Article 61(1)(e) of the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda 1995 and Sections 18 and 20 of the Electoral Commission Act Cap 176 to compile, maintain, revise and update the National Voters Register and further display the compiled and updated register in accordance with Section 26 of the said Act. So it goes on to say that in preparation for the 2025-26 general elections, the EC released a roadmap wherein the display of the National Voters Register was scheduled to commence on the 17th of April 2025 and end on 8th May 2025. However, and I want you to pay attention if you're listening, this exercise has been rescheduled and will now commence on the 25th of April 2025 and conclude on the 15th May 2025. Similarly, the display of the voters' registers for special interest groups, and these include the youth, persons with disabilities, and older persons, which was earlier scheduled to commence on 17th April until 28th April 2025, has also been rescheduled and will now commence on the 25th April and conclude on 8th May 2025. Further, the display period for the recommendations on inclusions and deletions, if any, from the respective parish tribunals, in line with Section 26(2) of the Act, will now run from Friday, 16th May 2025 to Monday, 26th May 2025 at the respective parishes countrywide. So the EC is appealing to all stakeholders in the electoral process to participate in the display of the voters' register and follow the guidelines that will be issued for the exercise being conducted in preparation for the 2025-26 general elections. It's signed by Justice Byabakama Mugenyi Simon, Chairperson, Electoral Commission. Let's take a break now, and we return. When we return, George and Major, I want us to talk about, of course, the commercialization of politics in light of the fee structures also that NRM came up with. We're seeing the numbers almost doubling, and the question is, our politics is already so highly commercialized. When you actually have these fee structures almost actually doubling in many cases, what does this mean? Is this healthy for our politics? This conversation will take place after. Welcome back from the break. It's 4 minutes past 10 o'clock. This is VPN, and we continue with our discussion on the internal party plans for 2026 polls. And also, we shall be talking about the plans to reintroduce and amend the UPDF Act, which I think we should be going into shortly after we discuss this issue of commercialization of politics. And before the break, I asked you, Major, we've seen this NRM nomination fees structure doubling. So just very quickly, let me read to you, our listener. The national chairman, now, if you want to contest for that role, you will be paying 20 million shillings, to be nominated. That's up from 10 million. If you want to contest for the NRM first national vice chairperson position as a male, you will now be required to pay 10 million shillings, up from 5 million shillings. Second national vice chairperson female is the same. You'll be required to pay 10 million shillings to be nominated. The national vice chairperson of the regions, you now have to pay 5 million shillings. League chairpersons, 1 million shillings. Other executive members, 500,000 shillings. NRM district city chairperson, 500,000 shillings. Now, we are talking about just nomination fees alone for the party. We have 100 million shillings given out because to, supposedly alleviate the sufferings of MPs. But it is coming at a season where we already see NRM hitting the ground running to actually nominate candidates to express their interest to run for the different positions. Then we are going into a heavy spending season when politicians are now campaigning, selling themselves to the public to get votes. What does this mean broadly for our politics? Because I think in the last election alone, there was a lot of money floating around. And when you talk to election observers, people who actually follow the money during politics, the estimate is that in the coming election alone, MPs in some constituencies could be spending up to 3 billion shillings or so just to look for votes. What does that do to our politics? You have the idea, you're a strong candidate, but you don't have the money. Then what does that do to? And then how does that impact the quality of our legislation?
Okay, the nomination fees and the structure that you have read for party positions, but there's also nomination fees for those who will want for standing for parliamentary, flag bearers, that is, for primary election.
So this does not include...
Yeah, there's somewhere, I think you didn't see it.
Okay.
For example, if somebody is going to stand for Agago North, and they are going for primary, you may find like 4 candidates for Agago North. They also have to pay.
How much are they paying?
I think for members of parliament is 5 million. Yeah, I need to check. But it is that. I have it here on my phone. Now, about the fee structure, it was debated in Central Executive Committee, the highest party organ, and it is that body that passes it. And the wisdom there is that it is one revenue to support our candidates. Because we don't only support our candidates by giving them manifestos or giving them ideological line, we support them financially. For example, if a candidate pays 5 million to register for primary election, and then that is for nomination, and then a flag bearer, a flag winner, is given 30 million. It means, therefore, that his money has been given back, plus the money of the colleagues who participated. So basically, the party has not eaten anything. In other words, you have won the flag, take back your 5 million, even your friends who stood with you, we still collect their money and give it back to you. So it was legitimately thought that to support our candidates in both giving them ideological line, giving them the manifesto to rely on because they're standing as a party candidate. We also give them logistics in terms of little finance, and this little finance we thought should be raised within the party and raised by party members, and this is part of it. So that is why we feel that it's not expensive, and it is just manageable, and it serves the party interest. Literally, the money goes back to party members at various structures. Now, about the cost in other elections, I think we have been crying all along about this. And because we have been government in power, we have used that in the past to make government initiate legislations that can curb this, including criminalizing some activities that involves money. But practice shows that we have not, as a government, done much, or as a country done much. Judith, you come from the north, I come from the north as well. In the part that I know very well in the north, the situation is so alarming for money use. For example, the law doesn't allow giving money, but do you know, in some places, people line up. It's not enough for you to come and talk, address people in a place and say, thank you for coming for my rally. I have left you water to drink. No, you don't give even to your representative to give them water. People line up and you give cash in their hand, either 200,000 or 500. That is how bad it is. So, the money used in elections, we need to think twice. I'm not so sure. My land friend is here. We say a good lawyer is not the one who crams the law, but knows where to get it. I'm not yet certain about a provision of criminalizing both the giver and the receiver, because we need to criminalize both the receiver and the giver. Because right now it looks like if you give, what about if you receive? Otherwise, we are going to such a crisis situation that the use of money will impede democracy. especially in specific electoral activities. Therefore, I want to answer your question in two forms. That is, for the cost of the party nominations in NRM, I think I've explained it well enough. But for the use of the other money, we are equally concerned. And more so, we are equally concerned as a ruling party which has been in power for a while, because we should have used our governance position to legislate and to pass procedures that can curb this. Yes. I don't know whether at some point before we go to the next segment that I would mention key timelines in this roadmap.
You can.
Now, just to be fair enough, this road timeline starts from number 1 up to number very many. But then I just want to mention, first of all, party members will get these documents in their respective jurisdiction. But I'd like to mention a few of them, that the polling at the village level for NRM will be on May 6th, 2025, of course. Then polling day for structures at parish will be on the 12th. And then we are polling day for structure at a sub-county will be on the 16th. So those who are interested, get ready. Polling day for structure for municipalities on 19th. And then I pick another polling day for special interest group will be May 24th. And then members of parliament, their polling day will be July 16th. And then local government councils, those who are interested, the polling day will be 24th of July. Then local councils for municipal divisions will be on August 18th. And then the district and town will be on August 15th. Our national conference, the one we say we go to Nambole or wherever it might be, will be between 22nd August to 25th. So I just thought I would mention these key highlights in our roadmap so that our party members who are interested can work around it. I thank you.
Okay, thank you. George, let's come to you. Still on the issue of commercialization of our politics. I know the need for parties to raise money internally, and certainly parties have to raise money from their members. But also, if we could also have some honest conversation from your side as NUP, how pervasive is the issue of money within your party?
Well, there are two limbs to it from your question. The first one is the one of the legitimate fees charged by a party for those who are seeking elective positions. NRM has set its fees. That is, I think, every party comes to what is fair depending on the circumstances that prevail and in their wisdom. And I wouldn't look so much at that as commercialization, because it's more of setting some bit of
sustainability for the party.
Yes, and
yes.
Internal fundraising, which is legitimate everywhere in the world. The bigger part of commercialization is actually outside the party. It's all parties, but out in the electorate. And I remember, maybe we can even, since this issue also hinted in its preamble, the debate of the 100 million. When this parliament had just, the 11th parliament, had gone about 1 year into its term, there was an issue of the 40 million which was given to them. And of course there were denials across the board and haphazard replies from official replies from Parliament. I remember one time the spokesperson said, "No, it's gratuity." Then others were denying. I bumped into one of a member of Parliament and who has been in Parliament for over 10 years when that debate was raging. Then I think it was 2022, and he told me that no, right now, and he's an opposition member of Parliament, says no, it's very, very hard for any MP to return this money. I know, yes, it was received, but you know, MPs are very broke immediately after coming out of an election. You realize that many times in the electorate, MPs are not politicians, not just MPs, many politicians. Maybe it's even worse for MPs. Almost social liability centers. They pay school fees. They
contribute for burials, marriages, weddings,
fundraising, and so on and so forth. And that's how it has been structured to be. It's only in, and of course the electorates also vary depending on whether that money indeed influences an election. Because there are those constituencies where money directly influences an election, that this person comes with $1 billion and he literally buys. I remember I participated in an election in Bushenyi in 2017 as an active, not as a candidate, as an active campaigner for one of the candidates. And I realized even on polling day, people being bought for 2,000 shillings. Someone stands about 100 meters from the polling center, starts targeting people who are coming to vote. It's that bad in some constituencies. Of course, in others, especially the urban areas, sometimes even with as much money, you can't win. You can't buy the election. We just saw it in Kawempe. I'm sure I saw Observer writing that the party chairman of NRM was furious about the kind of money he gave to his team, and the election they brought out. Maybe each vote was costed at around 10,000 shillings, given the money sunk in. So it's a bad thing for our democracy, because one, it affects it in this way. It makes MPs very vulnerable and prone to financial manipulation, like we've seen in all the parliaments. Because if an MP comes in heavily indebted, and they can't even sustain it with the illegitimate payments, it will mean that they have to look for money from all sorts of corners. But then too, it deprives society of maybe other kind of leaders who are not ready to go into that murky type of politics. And there are so many decent people who cannot join politics because of how murky it seems and because of having to deal with so many of those issues. So it does directly affect the democracy. It affects the kind of leaders you have. But then at a bigger level, given that it affects even the legislation that comes out of parliament, because if an MP is going to vote and their vote on a certain bill is because of the incentive, financial incentive that has been promised to them or has been given to them, then what is the quality of that legislation? I compare it to a judicial officer making a judgment because they have been bought, not because of the facts and the law. So it's bad for our democracy on all those fronts, and unfortunately, the NRM government has institutionalized it. The issue of commerce, I don't think they can fight it successfully. And Mr. Museveni has so many times told MPs that, stop giving these people money or what. But he does it himself. He gives even the MPs that now even know it. When there's something contentious that is very interested in, they ring his arm. They tell him, okay, you scratch our back, we scratch your back. It's been institutionalized. And even to the electorate, the electorate has come to know that a leader has to give out something. Major Awich here, if he went in his village and decided to address people about civic competence, about something, they say, yes, we've had everything, but then how are we living?
Get back on the microphone.
It's been that institutionalized.
How do we tame this? How do we tame it as a country? Because clearly, like you all agree, it is unhealthy for our politics. It is unhealthy for our democracy, and it has broader implications in the long term.
Judith,
how do we tame that?
We shall have to have a fundamental change from the top. We shall have to have a fundamental reset, because as it is now, NRM cannot fight commercialization, even if they wanted. Even if they wanted, they ferry people to the rallies, they give them something. I don't know how many people would come to the NRM rallies if they're not promised lunch or a transport ticket. So it's been that institutionalized that it's only in some of these urban constituencies, Kampala Metropolitan and nearby, where possibly sometimes people will eat the money but protest against it. That even if you find a candidate who has sunk in a lot of money, sometimes even losing. So it takes it's some bit of realization of the public, but it will have to take a fundamental change at the top for it to be rebutted.
Okay, interesting. So let's now shift focus to the issue of reintroducing and amending the UPDF Act. As you know, this week there was a lot of anticipation that Parliament would actually it would be tabled and debated in Parliament, but that did not happen. Of course, we know these conversations have been going on, but it's just less than 3 months after the Supreme Court blocked the trial of civilians in military courts. And there's a lot of contestation there, for many Ugandans. Some people look at this as an attempt by our parliamentarians to circumvent the ruling by the Supreme Court and, perhaps smuggle in some articles or provisions that would be contentious that actually defy this ruling by the Supreme Court. So I know we've had this conversation with Major Wich elsewhere about what the version to be tabled would actually entail, and I understand the argument that, it is not yet out. Even within the NRM caucus itself, people are not yet aware of what this exactly is. But I just want to pick your quick thoughts. Major, again, I'll start with you. What exactly, again, would be the arguments for having this bill amended in light of the ruling by the Supreme Court and the recommendations that it made in January?
Okay, thank you so much. As you rightly put, the Prime Minister, I think in line with Rule 28 of the Rule of Procedure of Parliament, is supposed to announce the next week's government impending bills. So the Prime Minister had already announced that this bill will come, but it has not yet come. And as far as I collect my information as a party in power, I get that it has not yet even gone to cabinet. So because ideally the technical draftsman or draftswoman in the first Parliamentary Council, which is a directorate under Minister of Justice in Attorney General's chambers, that directorate is supposed to draft the law. They are given the objective of the law, the narrative. They are given the narrative, and they package it in legal format. And they're supposed to take it to the mother ministry, which is Defense. Mm-hmm. And Defense is supposed to look at it. If they want to make proposals, they bring it back to the technical draftswoman or draftsman, and then it takes it back to the ministry. So it is the ministry which takes it to cabinet. I'm told all that procedures have not been left. But all the same, you are getting our thoughts on it since the Prime Minister has already announced. Now, you recall that before the Supreme Court ruling, this bill was actually in Parliament. Mm-hmm, people forget that, because people think it is coming for the first time to defeat the Supreme Court ruling. No, there was this UPDF amendment bill in Parliament before the ruling. And part of the concerns then was, for example, how to appeal, for example, appellate provision from a court martial to civil courts. Because then the existing provision was that people were appealing to Court of Appeal. But then when it reached the case of one Lieutenant Ogwang, the Supreme Court said, no, you have no right of appeal. So this brought confusion. The appeal that had been there was because the then Minister of Defense, Honorable Amam Bowers, had put a right of appeal under a regulation. And the court said, no, an appeal is a creature of law. It's a birth by an act of Parliament. You just don't put it by a regulation of a minister. So that was one of the intended appeal. Mm-hmm. Amendment. Now, when the court ruling came, then government said, now, why would we only present an amendment which is already lying before Parliament? Since court has opened our eyes and we are respecting the court, let us withdraw it. How I think Uganda should appreciate government from that position, that originally before the court ruling there was this bill already in Parliament. He said, okay, now court has made pronouncement. There are some directives court has given. Let us withdraw this bill. Let us look at it holistically, capture what court has said, and then we put it back. But people choose to look it from the half-empty glass theory. Mm-hmm. You know, Judith, if you have a glass of water here, some people, if you ask how is this glass, they will choose to say it is half empty instead of saying half full. So half empty means you're only interested in the negative. Therefore, this amendment was in place before. It was just withdrawn to accommodate the court ruling. Therefore, this recent one, government which NRM formed, which is the ruling party, is alive to Article 92 of the Constitution, which says Parliament shall not make laws to defeat a court ruling. That the court has ruled this, you go to Parliament and you pass a law against that. No. We are very cognizant, we are very alive to this provision, and it will be respected. Therefore, the gist of this impending bill, the gist is a prohibition. The mischief being cured in this bill is that people who ordinarily should not use guns should not use it. And to address that mischief, bring them within the armpit of the Army Court. For example, I will give 2 examples. If somebody rapes, if he uses a rope or he uses a knife, that is not the interest in this bill. But if somebody rapes using a gun, then the spirit in this court is that it should be dealt with here.
Okay. I'm told it's time for us to take a break. Let's take a break and then we'll return. But I'll also give George the platform first to speak, and then you'll come later. But George, what
because I have a list of examples.
I know, but when George, when we return, I would like you to weigh in, of course, from the human rights perspective, the key concerns that you and your colleagues have about this amendment, especially looking at the legal and constitutional implications, but also if you have concerns about the timing of this amendment. We'll hear that from you after the break. Welcome back from the break. It's 10:31 a.m. This is VPN. My name is Judith Atim. We've now moved on to the second segment of our discussion, and that's the plans to reintroduce and amend the UPDF Act. George, earlier I had posed a few questions to you. I would now give you the platform, the microphone for you to respond. The key concerns from the human rights perspective regarding the amendment of the UPDF bill.
Well, from the Supreme Court decision of January 31st, indeed, court made some recommendations which it thought, if amended into law, would make those courts function better. Some of them included, for instance, issues to do with the competence of those courts, where the court was advising that maybe you need to put to have people who are competent, who are lawyers, to try these people. Remember, the UPDF Act has offences which even attract a death penalty, and it was wrong to have a person's fate decided by a person who even doesn't know anything about the law. There were issues to do with the independence of those courts, because, as it were, those people, the court-martial chairs could be appointed and removed at any point at the discretion of the commander-in-chief. So there was need to create some bit of independence for purposes of executing their mandates properly. And those amendments actually even benefit soldiers, not just for civilians, even soldiers who are tried before those courts. There was also the issue, like my colleague has talked about, the issue of appeals, creating a right of appeal directly to these civil courts where a person has been possibly convicted by the other courts. And those are some of the issues that the Supreme Court called advisory orders, which could indeed be amended into law. And yes, it was also legitimate and right for government, since there was already a bill in the House, to withdraw it and incorporate some of those changes. However, the key concern arises in the elephant in the room, the issue of trial of civilians in court martials. The reason why Honorable Kabazi Guruka went to court in the first place was saying, I'm a civilian and I'm supposed to be in that court, and that has always been the biggest concern. The reason there's been uproar in the general public about use of those courts has been the way in which the court has increasingly been weaponized for purposes of fighting political battles. In the last general elections, over 600 civilians found themselves remanded to different prisons by different army courts. And these were not being found with weapons. They're not found with bullets or guns. It's even ranged from issues of being found with a T-shirt for purposes of political witch hunt. I represented quite a number of political people from my party who found themselves in that court. And I also know how those who some would be found with so-called weapons or bullets or armor like that provision which was announced by the Supreme Court say it was. You find that they would arrest someone. For instance, there was a group of people who were arrested on the campaign trail with our presidential candidate in December 2021, and all of them were in detention in Masaka. However, they said, no, we carried out a search in the home of one of them and we found 4 bullets. So they found themselves, 48 people found themselves on remand for over 6 months for allegedly being found with bullets when they were in state custody at the time of that so-called search. So the uproar by the public was how the army court was being used as a political position. And the biggest concern is, as we go into another election, isn't this another, the manner in which they want to bring back this court for purposes of political witch hunt? Of course, they are hiding it under the guise of saying, if you're found with a weapon, but we all know. You remember the weapons which were paraded by the police in Arua that they were allegedly found in the room. We know how weapons can be planted on anyone as for purposes of charging you, bring you within the ambit of charging. Remember, at the time when you are charged, it just takes a document. It just takes a document. We have people who were charged in Masaka with aggravated robbery. One of them was not even in Masaka on that day. The Achille Ochivombi and the others. So it just takes some person writing, Judith has been found in position of an AK-47.
But George, just very quickly, are you concerned that if this law is amended and assented to before we go into the elections in 2026, we would probably see a repeat of November 2021 or even worse?
Of course, that is the biggest concern. That's the biggest concern, that this court was used as a tool to fight political opponents in the last election. And some of the reason for the hurried bringing back of this is precisely because of that. That's the biggest concern. When they talk about competence, civil courts have the competence to try any offense under the sun. My colleague knows that the High Court has unlimited jurisdiction to try any offense, even terrorists.
He gave the example that if someone rapes using a rope or using a gun, then the one with a gun would be tried. But someone would say rape is rape, regardless of what tool or weapon was used.
My issue is civil courts have the competence to try any offense under the sun. 2010 terrorists, people were convicted of bombing Ugandans in 2010. Were convicted by civil courts and they're in prison. There is no offense which they say that the army, because it involved this weapon, the army has a special expertise. Otherwise, even doctors would be saying if an offense involves medical malpractice, you bring it to us if it's a criminal offense. So civil courts have the competence to try any offense under the sun. The question should be that let the army court keep on trying people who are army officers. The poisoned chalice that is being hidden in this bill is the bringing back of, and of course, we know we've not seen a draft yet, but we've seen the documents coming from both the NRM caucus, which was signed by Mr. Amson Oboa, what they resolved, and what Mr. Bariomus was saying the other day at the media center, that the bigger gist and their biggest concern as we go into election is to see that they bring back the civilians within the ambit of army courts, which of course they directly control.
Major, over to you.
On the question of the court's position on civilians in court, I think in the ruling of Windolo, and this could be a debate on the floor of Parliament, other readings is to the effect that the court says if you meet this, then exceptions can be granted. But since we are going to the plenary, we shall see what happens. Because the court is now ready to say we shall meet the required standard. and therefore benefit from those exceptions. For example, the Army has enough qualified lawyers who qualified to be judges of the High Court. In fact, the Chief of Legal Services, Brigadier Wandera, is a classmate to Sekana, who is now in a Court of Appeal. Myself, I finished Makerere Law School when I was a captain, and my classmates are already judges, like Emmanuel Baguma and others. They're already judges. So even those who are in real practice in the Army, they meet that. Now, the thinking there is that if you meet this standard, then the exceptional positions that, for example, I tried to list them. I gave the example of the rep with a gun. The case of the cattle rustling, where you have that unique case of a cattle rustling of 1,000 people armed with guns going to rustle. And the thinking is that ordinary courts, like my friend would wish to say, is that the practice has seen that they can't handle it. You see, laws are not thrown from heaven. Laws is a decision of a society to address a particular mischief. In other words, if you say ordinary courts, like I know the constitutional provision of High Court having unlimited jurisdiction, yes, that is it. But then we live in a practical society, and these laws are supposed to address emerging mischief as seen practically. So the society is now asking itself, we have had courts in Karamoja, but have these courts been able to try rustlers? No. And therefore, if the law says courts in Karamoja can try, and courts in Karamoja have failed, so what should society do? Should society sit and say, okay, the law is saying they can try, but they have failed, so it's okay. So laws...
How have they failed? The prosecutors are incompetent, or judicial officers are incompetent? How have they failed?
How they have failed, first of all, the scope is that it's big. It's not a one Robert or Peter doing it. The scope is big. Two, the accused causes fear because they control the societal gun and threat. And three, even the prosecutors themselves would fear because of the scope. So the gravity of the matter, it impedes the normal court process. Therefore, what I'm saying here is that the court ruling, which says meet the human rights position, and that includes the persons put in that court and its independence there too, gives a way for exceptional cases. But as I said, this could be the reading from different people, and that can only be ironed on the floor of the National Assembly, because Parliament is an assembly of the 45 million Ugandans. We have our assembly there in our representations. Further, if I may say, one other intended amendments in this impending amendment is the Army wants to introduce other structures of the court and abolish others, because under the existing law there are some structures, as I said earlier, when tested in practice it found not workable with the current structures of the Army. So that is it. Therefore, the amendment is in consonance with the proposals the court made, which our reading seems to think it gives exceptions. But we're going to be on the floor of Parliament, and we shall hear from other views.
Okay, thank you. So we'll be opening our phone lines in about a minute or so. But here are just a few questions that have come through. To George, Dr. Kizza Besigye and Obaid Lutali are currently being charged before a civil court, and they're on remand in Luzira prison. If this amendment bill is introduced, can the treason charges be again transferred to the military court from the civil court? Another concern is that treason is a capital offense. Besigye belongs to the People's Front for Freedom, which now accuses the Electoral Commission of delaying to register them as a political party. So what happens if Dr. Kizza Besigye wanted to contest under PFF and his case is not yet disposed of and he's still under detention, and yet presidential nominations will be starting at the beginning of October? Is this move, the UPDF Amendment Bill, politically or legally motivated? Another concern, Bobi Wine has been charged before the military court before, and the move is to have civilians tried again before this court once the amendment is passed and enacted into law. We have a son of the president who is also CDF on record, going by his social media account X, saying he will not allow NUP president Bobi Wine contest, or, he'll have him arrested by May. Another concern is to you, Major. What specialty do military judges have that is absent in the traditional court system? Or should we consider having military judges appointed at the High Court to deliver this expertise? Just coming from Philip Mulisa. Our studio lines, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening in, 0393 933 933, 0393 262 933. 0393 262 934. You could also reach us on 0393 266 933, 0701 933 934, and lastly 0751 933 900. We have a caller.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Is this Ekode?
Yes, Ekode.
Thanks for the show, Judy.
Thank you, Michael.
And I want to thank the panelists, Council Judge and Major, for their insights on this topic this morning. I have a question for each panelist.
Yes.
Start with the Council.
Yeah.
We had one of the ADF commanders was called Mukuru, who was arrested. He was told that he was the ADF commander, and he was prosecuted and he sentenced. Can this case also be considered so that the civilians who are considered to be having firearms be charged in the higher courts other than the military courts? That's my question to the council.
Thank you, Judge. Yes.
The major, NRM, the current government, let's accept. If you people are representing the Ugandans, if Ugandans are saying, please, we don't want civilians to be charged in the military courts, why don't you hear our voices? And finally, in the internal politics of NRM, they are the most violated primaries we have ever had in this country, in NRM. I don't know how you have prepared in your internal primaries for the party. Thanks for the show.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Michael, rather. Yes.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning. May I know who I'm talking to?
This is Bright Maris from Namugongo.
Who is this?
Bright Maris from Namugongo.
Yes, Bright. Good morning.
Good morning. So on the issue of commercializing politics, yesterday I've been in Kanunga and the people were saying, it is reaching the period of politics, we get some money. So it starts down from the root up to the leaders. Now, the second act was...
we lost Bright. Hello?
Juma from Busega.
Yes, Juma.
Thank you very much for serving the nation.
You're welcome. Good morning.
Police avoiding no from conducting their activities, that is uncalled for. This is the very police who allow NRM to do their activities without any inconveniences. So the government should look into that. Hey, Parliament receive money from who? I wanted to know who is from who. Don't you? This thing needs to be clarified proper. Yet Museveni recently cited the Ministry of Finance with the connived with the Parliament and chairman among themselves, mostly the commissioners. That claim was by Museveni himself. I think he's a very one who gave money to Parliament, a member of Parliament. So all those are not new things in Uganda.
So I would like to say, Uganda, whenever you see Museveni in the ballot box, other politicians, please, you look for plan B. This man is a machinery. He's a state who move with the gun. He's now not even under democracy. It is a personal feeling he has about living this country, Uganda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Juma. Okay. I think Stephen says it's 10:49, so we're not picking any more calls for now. So we'll give you the opportunity to respond to all the issues that came in. George, I think you'll go first.
All right. You initially, before we went into the phone lines, you asked about treason offences against Dr.
Kizza Besigye and
Haji Obed. Of course, I'm one of those who believe that those offences are more political than legal, given in the manner in which it has been handled. When you look at the charge sheet that they presented before the Army Court initially, and then as it is now, of course, incorporated with what we've been seeing, the CDF tweeting about the case, talking about when they're going to be hanged, never mind that they are suspects, talking about how he has refused them to be released, how he arrested them, how they not come out until they apologize to him. It has killed any bit of legality that existed, if at all there was any, in the sense of it. So before of course there's not been any disclosure regarding the state saying this is the evidence, because they are saying investigations are ongoing. Never mind that in the Army Court they had said that they are ready to start trial. The state had said in the Army Court that we're ready to start trial, and that's one of the reasons why the Army had blocked the defense team's quest to have a constitutional matter, the matter referred to a constitutional court. Here now they're saying no, investigations are ongoing. So I want to imagine that the case is more political. Can they be now be taken to the Army courts? Of course, that's a hypothetical question, assuming that the bill has passed and created some bit of jurisdiction. The issue is that those Army courts, once they have jurisdiction to try civilians, they can do anything. It doesn't matter what legality is there. I've seen all sorts of funny charge sheets. I've just told you about one where they say these people have been found in possession of 4 bullets, yet all the people are in state custody. So they can use them to do anything. It doesn't matter whether there is a case or not. However, regarding the other hypothetical question of whether he is interested in standing, yes, our laws don't preclude someone from standing as long as he's still a suspect. They only preclude convicts of certain offences. So if he has not been convicted of any offence which brings him within, he can still stand. He has been nominated before in 2006 when he's in custody, when he's facing some sort of charges. Then lastly, I think the only one from me, from Mr. Kude, of course, he's bringing that same contestation that if these civil courts have the capacity to try Jamil Mukulu, a person who you allege declared war against this government, started a rebel group, killed all sorts of people as per your, then you are saying they don't have the capacity to try someone found with a pistol or allegedly found with. It's of course one of those ironical issues. Only maybe to correct your code that Jamil Mukulu is still a suspect and he hasn't been convicted like he had earlier said.
Okay, thank you, Major. We just have very few minutes, so we just have to run
few
through
minutes.
this.
I will just put bullet points to accommodate myself. Now, what specialities do military judges have? They don't have any specialities. The only specialities is actually the uniqueness of the crime, which the law envisages that this crime must have been accompanied by use of a gun. Like I said, the cattle rustling and the what. So otherwise, there's no speciality. But the other thing is that the military court are expeditious. They are faster because of its rules and the discipline the court officials express. So those are the only difference. Why not hear the cry of the civilians? Yes, NRM does hear the cry of the civilians, and that is why it will be put in the assembly of the country, the National Assembly. The only way to hear the cries of the people is put it to the assembly of the people, the National Assembly, that is Parliament. Then the cries will be discussed there. police to be fair to both NRM and others, I had already said I joined my friends is calling for a level ground.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much. I think it is about time for us to... Bright had actually talked about the commercialization of politics, but I think we lost him at some point in time. I think he was trying to give us an alternative of how this can be tamed, but we lost him. So in about just the remaining few minutes, if you could just give us your concluding remarks or your parting shots. We've been talking, of course, about a number of issues here. The internal party plans as we head into the 2026 general elections, and also the reintroduction and amendment to the UPDF Act. Just very quickly, George.
Of course, my parting shot will be for every Ugandan to call upon the powers that be to see that we have a clean process. Mm-hmm. And here every person only needs to do what they can to see that we have it. Because having elections as a ritual, like our constitution so rightly states in our preamble, that political instability has been one of the problems we've had in the past. And we thought that with our national consensus in the constitution, we can have a clean, credible process. So it works for all of us, irrespective of party dispensation, when we respect these laws. People are talking about reforms, but before you even talk about reforms, how about these ones? Because if you can't respect these minimums that we have, then we can't expect even much better from the bigger ones that we're asking for.
Okay, thank you very much. Major.
One is that our roadmap is clear, and those who want to participate in our elections should follow. Two is that the legislation that we are grappling with is the normal contradictions in our society. And every contradiction, when resolved, leads us to a higher level. And therefore, we hope this one will be resolved by this legislation. If, for example, it is so happens that the final text of the law still puts a civilian in a military court, we may have to, somebody will again, you never can tell, will raise another constitutional case against the same law, and the courts will have to pronounce itself. But suffice to say that the contradictions now that the society is trying to resolve will be resolved each time this contradiction is resolved. We go to a next level.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. That's retired Major Wich Pola, the Director for External Relations, NRM. He's also an advocate of the High Court. And Mr. George Musisi, human rights lawyer, legal representative of the NUP, and Member of Parliament, aspirant for Kira Municipality.
And also an advocate.
He is an advocate of the High Court, yes. My name is Judith Atim. I'm your host. This is VPN. We've been discussing the internal party plans for 2026 and also the plans by our legislators to reintroduce and amend the UPDF Act. Thank you very much to my two guests and to you who listened in and participated in this conversation. We do appreciate you for your insights and for keeping us company. Thank you very much. VPN returns next Saturday. Until then, for now, we wish you a happy Easter and just have a wonderful time.